My brother's rehearsal dinner was held at my restaurant. When he saw me come out of the kitchen, he turned to his fiancée's parents and said, "That's just the help. Don't worry about her." That help had signed the deed to this building 3 years ago. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been watching every minute of it from the prep station. Let me back up. I hadn't been home to Savannah in 4 months. Not because I was busy, though I was always busy, but because I knew exactly what coming home felt like. It felt like standing in a room where everyone had already decided who you were before you opened your mouth. My mother called on a Thursday evening when I was in the middle of approving a new fall menu. I almost let it go to voicemail. I should have. "Sweetheart, your brother's getting married," she said, like this was news. Like I hadn't already seen the engagement post on Instagram 6 weeks ago, the one where Tanner and his fiancée, Brinley, were posed on a dock at sunset, her ring catching the light just so, and the caption reading "Finally." The forever I always knew was coming. No call, no text. Just a tagged photo that I found by accident when I was scrolling on a Sunday night with a glass of wine. "I know, Mom," I said. "Well, they're doing the rehearsal dinner here in Savannah. At that new place downtown, the one on Forsyth." She paused. "Oleander," I set down my pen. Oleander was mine. I'd opened it 22 months ago. After 5 years of cooking in other people's kitchens, catering jobs that paid just enough to keep the dream breathing, and one investor who believed in me when my own family thought I was throwing my life away, chasing something that wouldn't stick. "Brinley's mother made the reservation," my mother continued, her voice careful and smooth in the way it always got when she was managing me. "It was Corinne's idea, actually. She said Oleander had the best reviews of any private dining room in the city. Very exclusive, very sought after." I waited. "I just thought you should know," she said, "since you'll probably see it on the calendar." She didn't say "since you own it." She said "since you'll see it on the calendar." Like I was a secretary. Like 4 years of building this place from a gutted space with bad plumbing, and a ghost of a previous tenant's cooking smells were just something that happened to someone else in the family. "I'll be there," I said. "Oh," a beat of genuine surprise. "You don't have to work that night." "Mom," I said slowly, "it's my restaurant." The dinner was on a Saturday in late October. The weeks before it were ordinary. Invoices, staff scheduling, a Saturday lunch service that ran long because of a wedding party that couldn't agree on dessert. My sous chef, a dry and brilliant woman named Adeline, who'd been with me since we opened, clocked my mood on a Wednesday and put a cortado on my station without asking. "You're thinking about the family thing," she said. "I'm thinking about the duck confit. You've been staring at that ticket for 4 minutes." I drank the cortado. "My brother's rehearsal dinner is here. His fiancée's family booked it. They don't know I own the place." Adeline tilted her head. "And your family?" "My mother knows. I'm not sure she told anyone else." I set the cup down. "Actually, I'm pretty sure she didn't." She looked at me for a moment. "What do you want to do?" I thought about it. The easy thing would be to send a note through the events coordinator, introduce myself in a polished email, and make sure everyone knew exactly who signed the checks before a single appetizer was plated. That would be tidy. That would be the professional thing. But I thought about the Instagram post I found by accident. The months of silence. The phone call from my mother that managed, in under 3 minutes, to make my life's work feel like a scheduling inconvenience. "I want to run service," I said. "Same as any other night." Adeline almost smiled. "Understood. Here's what you need to know about my family to understand why any of this matters. I'm the older one. Tanner is 4 years younger, which in our house meant he was 4 years more interesting. I say that without bitterness now. Or at least I try to. But there's a particular kind of invisibility that comes with being the competent one. The one who got good grades without being told to. The one who figured things out quietly and didn't need the same calibration Tanner needed, the same attention, the same course corrections. My parents loved him with their hands. They loved me with their assumptions. They assumed I was fine, that I would always be fine. That fine was just my factory setting and didn't require maintenance. When I told them I wanted to go to culinary school instead of a 4-year university, my mother got very quiet. My father said, "You've always been the practical one. I thought you'd do something with a future." I was 21. I nodded, applied anyway, and paid my own tuition. When I moved to Savannah to open the restaurant, my mother visited twice in 2 years. She complimented the wallpaper the first time. The second time, she asked if I was seeing anyone. Tanner visited once, stayed for 40 minutes, and said the portions were too small for the price. So when the reservation for his rehearsal dinner came through our events system 6 weeks before the date, listed under Hargrove Vance Party, 18 guests, private dining room, full buyout, I knew my family had no idea. Corinne Vance, Brinley's mother, had found Oleander the way civilians find good restaurants. A friend's recommendation, a strong review in a local magazine, a scroll through photos that made the room look exactly like what it is. Warm light, exposed brick, a menu that changes with what's actually in season. She had no idea the chef owner grew up 40 minutes away and shared a last name with the groom. I decided to let it stay that way until the right moment. Adeline and I briefed the front-of-house team the week before. Our events manager, a meticulous man named Shepard who I trusted completely, flagged it with a small asterisk in the internal notes. Ownership connection. Chef will advise. No one mentioned it. No one made it strange. The night of the dinner, I got there at 4:30. Same as always. Walked the dining room, checked the linens, tasted the amuse-bouche, confirmed the wine pairings. The private room at the back of the restaurant had been set with the tall tapered candles Corinne had requested, and a low arrangement of white camellias that someone had sourced from a florist I'd never worked with before. It looked beautiful. I made a note to ask who did them. The guests started arriving at 6:30. I stayed in the kitchen. I watched through the pass-through, a long, narrow window between the kitchen and the service corridor, as Shepard greeted everyone with the easy warmth that made him exceptional at his job. I could see the edge of the private room from where I stood. I watched Brinley arrive in a cream-colored dress, her mug close behind her, confident and well-dressed in the way that spoke of someone who knew which fork to use and always had. I watched my parents come in, my mother in the blue wrap dress she saved for occasions, my father shaking Corinne's hand and saying something that made the older woman laugh politely. And then I watched Tanner walk in. He looked good. That was the first honest thought I had. He'd grown up in the years since I'd seen him last, filled out a little, wore his suit without looking uncomfortable in it. He had the easy posture of someone who had never once doubted whether they belonged in the room they were standing in. I watched him put his arm around Brinley and speak to her parents with a confidence that was either genuine or very well practiced. I found I couldn't tell anymore. Then one of our servers, a young woman who'd been with us 8 months and was excellent, came through the kitchen door with a small request from the table. Corinne wanted to know if the chef would come out and say hello. It was something Oleander was known for. It wasn't unusual. I dried my hands. I straightened my jacket. I told Adeline I'd be back in 5 minutes. The room fell into that particular soft lull that private dinners get after the second round of drinks, when people have stopped performing arrival and started actually relaxing. I stepped through the door into the warm light of the dining room and scanned the table. Corinne was at the head, closest to me, a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a genuine smile. She started to stand, and that's when Tanner looked up from his conversation and saw me. The smile didn't leave his face immediately. It took a beat, 2 beats, like a record skipping. Then he laughed, a short surprised sound, and reached out to grab Brinley's arm. "Oh!" he said loudly, cutting across whatever Corinne was about to say. "Hey, that's my sister. She works here." He gestured at me with the easy carelessness of someone pointing out a building. Then he turned back to her parents. "Small world, right? Don't mind her. She's just back of house." The table chuckled. A few people glanced at me with polite, brief interest. Just back of house. I let the words sit in the air for exactly 1 second. Then I smiled, walked to the head of the table where Corinne was standing, and extended my hand. "Corinne, thank you so much for choosing Oleander," I said. "I'm so glad we could make this night special for your family. I'm Ren. I'm the chef and owner. This is my restaurant." The laughter stopped. Corinne's hand was firm and warm in mine. Her eyes moved from my face to somewhere behind me, at Tanner, I guessed, and something quick and assessing passed through her expression. "Your restaurant," she said, and it wasn't a question exactly. It was her catching up. Yes, I said. I opened Oleander about 2 years ago. We do about 40 covers a night on weekdays and full buyouts on weekends for occasions exactly like this one. I kept my voice even and warm. Not triumphant. Not pointed. Just accurate. Brinley's father, a quiet man named Dara, who had the stillness of someone who preferred listening to talking, set down his wine glass. So Tanner's sister owns this place, he said slowly. She does, I said. He looked down the table at Tanner, and I did too. My brother's face had gone through several colors in about 30 seconds. He'd landed somewhere around the particular shade of someone who understood, all at once, that they had made a mistake in a room full of witnesses. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I just meant, she's the chef, like, she's in the kitchen. That's what I was. Back of house is where the food comes from, Adeline said from behind me. I hadn't heard her follow me out, but of course she had. She stood just inside the doorway with her arms folded, her expression mild as winter. It's kind of the whole thing. Corinne laughed. It was a real laugh, surprised and warm, and it broke something loose in the room. She reached over and touched my arm. Honey, sit with us for a minute. Tell me how you built this place. I looked at my mother, who was very still, her hands folded in her lap, and her eyes fixed on the centerpiece. My father was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite name. Not pride exactly, but something adjacent to it, something waking up late. I pulled a chair from the side station and sat next to Corinne. What she asked me that night, how I built it, what I trained on, where the menu came from, why Savannah, how I got the space. I've answered those questions 100 times. But that night I answered them differently. Not because the facts were different, but because the audience was. I talked about the culinary school my parents thought was a mistake. The kitchens I'd worked in on salary that barely covered rent. The investor who believed in me. The 18 months it took to turn that gutted building into a dining room that finally looked the way I'd imagined it from the beginning. Dara listened the whole time. When I finished, he nodded slowly. You built this from scratch, he said. Yes, sir. He looked down the table again. Tanner had recovered enough to look neutral, which was its own kind of answer. Brinley was watching me with an expression that was harder to read, something between embarrassment and something older, maybe recognition. Corinne leaned over and said quietly, near my ear, Your brother didn't mention any of this. No, I said. I don't imagine he did. I excused myself after 15 minutes, went back into the kitchen, and finished service. The food went out beautifully. The duck was right. The dessert course landed at exactly the right moment, when the table had relaxed into the kind of warmth that makes people generous with compliments and slow to leave. Shepard told me afterward that Corinne had asked twice for my contact information, not for the event's email, but specifically for mine. My mother found me in the hallway near the coat check at the end of the night. She was alone. She looked tired in the particular way that comes not from being up too late, but from holding something tightly all evening. You could have told us, she said. I thought about that. You knew, I said. You've known for 2 years. She didn't argue it. She just stood there, and I watched her decide not to say whatever she'd come back to say. It's a beautiful place, she said finally. It really is. I thanked her. I meant it. My father texted me the next morning. Proud of you. Sorry it took me this long to say it out loud. 12 words. I read them 4 times, then put my phone face down on the counter and made coffee. Something in my chest unknotted by a fraction that it had been holding since I was 21 years old. Dara and Corinne booked Oleander for the wedding reception 4 days later, not through the events form on our website, through a personal email to me from Dara, which said, We'd like to give our daughter's wedding to someone who built something real. If you'll have us. I said yes. I meant that too. The week of the wedding, Brinley came in alone for a tasting. Just the 2 of us and Adeline, working through the courses at the big table in the prep kitchen. She was quieter than I'd expected, more careful. About halfway through, between the soup and the fish, she put her fork down. He didn't know how to talk about you, she said. I don't think he knew how. I looked at her. He could have learned. She nodded. She didn't make excuses for him, and I didn't ask her to. We finished the tasting. The soup was almost right. I adjusted the fennel. Tanner called me 2 weeks after the wedding. I let it go to voicemail the first time, then called back the next morning on a walk before the restaurant opened. "Hey," he said. "Hey." A long pause. "The food was incredible, everyone said it." "Thanks." Another pauses. "I think I've been kind of an ass to you," he said. "Not I'm sorry. Not yet." But the directness of it surprised me enough that I stopped walking. "Yeah," I said. "You have. I didn't think." He stopped. Started again. "I guess I didn't think you were serious. Like, about all of it. The cooking thing. I thought it was going to be a phase and then you'd do something else. And I didn't take it. I didn't take you seriously." I stood on the sidewalk outside a cafe that wasn't mine, watching a man at a corner table read a newspaper with a coffee going cold beside him. "I know," I said. "I'm working on it," he said. "That's all I've got right now." I thought about telling him all the things I'd carried for years. The Instagram post I found by accident. The 40-minute visit. The portions were too small for the price. I thought about how long I'd wanted someone in my family to say exactly what he'd just said, and how strange it felt that it didn't fix everything the way I'd imagined it would. "Okay," I said. "Work on it." I hung up and went to open my restaurant. For a long time, I'd believed that the point of building something was to make people understand what you were worth. To build high enough and solid enough that no one could mistake you again. But that's not really what you're building for, I think. You're building because you need to, because the work itself is the answer to something, and the people who see it will see it when they're ready. Some of them never will. That used to feel like failure. Now it just feels like information. Oleander had 3 tables of regulars on a Tuesday night, the week after Tanner's call, and the kitchen was quiet in the best way. The kind of quiet that means everyone knows their job and is doing it. Adeline was tasting a sauce off a spoon and making a small disapproving sound that I knew meant it needed 30 more seconds, not a new ingredient. The tickets were moving. The room was warm. I wasn't waiting for anyone to see me anymore. I was already here.